Okay, today we're going to talk about the writer's bookshelf because let's face it, you can't be a writer without any books. Okay, so I'm going to share over 10 books that have helped me over the last decade as I began to develop myself specifically as a novelist. I'm probably going to do a similar video about poetry, essays or creative nonfiction, and screenwriting as well, but I'm actually best prepared to handle the fiction side of things today. So let's get started. One of my favorite books is The Elements of Style. This is actually my second copy, which I've never read. It's hardcover and there's pictures in it. I have a paperback, smaller version that I literally carry every day in my bag, and anytime I get free time, I am always reading Elements of Style. I'm not saying that I agree with everything in it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they agree with the Oxford comma, which is my biggest pet peeve in life. So I'm not saying that it is the Bible, but The Elements of Style is a really great place to start. So I think every fiction writer should have a copy of it and should read it definitely more than once. Okay, let's move on. Now, when my brother, he did a semester at Morehouse. He normally was going to Stanford for undergrad, did a semester at Morehouse, met a really cool brother, and my brother actually told him, hey, my little sister is a writer and she's really serious about it. At the time, I believe I was in high school. And so the man from Morehouse suggested that my brother buy me this, Writing Down the Bones. And this book, this is actually the same copy from like 15 years ago. It's crazy. And I've read this book so many times. This book is more important to me than The Elements of Style, and The Elements of Style is really important. The concept of free writing has changed my life as a writer. I highly recommend free writing in general, and I specifically recommend this book, not just for fiction writers, but for poets, for creative nonfiction writers, for screenwriters, for everyone. It doesn't get any better. Does not get any better. Okay, moving on. I love Forest for the Trees. Now, this book is not going to tell you how to write. It's not going to solve that problem. This is going to talk to you more so, especially in the beginning of the book, about being a writer, because it is a state of being. It separates you from everyone else in the world, and I'm telling you, you will find yourself on the pages of this book. So I highly recommend Forest for the Trees by Betsy Lerner. Okay, moving on. Now, I recently discovered this book. This is called Several Short Sentences About Writing. And let's see. This was published in 2013. So this might be the most recent book that I actually suggest. I love this book. As a poet, it reads like poetry. And I agree with almost everything I've read so far. I'm, only into the book, but I already recommend it. I will definitely, once I complete the book, I'll do a book review of it on blackbookshelf.blogspot.com, which will later be on LheaJ.com. That's LHEAJ.com. And so I will definitely be delving into several short sentences about writing later, but it doesn't get any better. This is a great book. Now, this year I bought How to Write a Sentence, and let me tell you, there is nothing in the world that I love more than a well-placed comma. And so the art of creating sentences is huge huge, huge. And I really enjoyed this book, and I highly recommend it to be on your writing bookshelf. Okay, now I actually couldn't find a book. The book that I couldn't find, it's somewhere in my apartment. I have no idea. It's probably in one of the bags that I've been carrying this year. Is Woe Is I. I love that book. But I also like Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. So basically, I like books that are about English grammar. And I definitely think Eats, Shoots, and Leaves and Woe Is I is a great place to start, because you want to get so familiar. You want it to be so second nature, even first nature. You want to be natural when you start to write. You don't want to be, wondering when to place the comma and when to use a semicolon, and can you split sentences with a colon, and you want to understand what an independent clause is, what a dependent clause is, what an appositive is. You want to know how to make parallel constructions. Even when you break the rules, you want to know that you're actually breaking the rules. You want everything you do to be intentional. Okay, let's move on. Now, in terms of actually writing the novel, once you have the grammar down and you know how to construct a sentence, you know how to make the perfect paragraph, now you're going to actually have to devote yourself, and how do you tell a narrative? How do you tell a story? And I really like The Plot Thickens. This, talks a lot about how to build characters, and then it actually talks about other things like the journey of the character, the suspense, the conflict. It talks about a lot, and it's a small book. It's very digestible, to the point. I highly, 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 highly recommend it being on your bookshelf. Okay, now one of my favorite books, this was published by Writer's Digest book, is Between the Lines. I'm pretty sure it's still in print the last time I checked. I've purchased this book for other people who have told me they want to purchase a novel. This breaks down every single element of a novel, and it gives great examples of how writers have used and mastered those elements within their different fiction pieces. So it gives excellent examples. I highly recommend Between the Lines. Highly recommend it. Can't recommend it enough. Okay, now this year you write your novel. I definitely wanted to mention Mosley because I enjoy his fiction and his nonfiction. I just enjoy him as a writer. The most important thing that I actually learned from this is to write every day, every single day. And I do. I write every day, and I make sure that I read something every day. And sometimes I refer back to this book just for a reminder that if you want to write something longer, like a novel, you need to write every day. Maybe if you're a poet, you can get away with not writing for weeks, but let me tell you, novels don't work like that. So this year, you write your novel. Okay, now I love this book. This is called The Top 10, and basically someone, I guess J. Peter Zane, he went around, probably emailed, called, contacted, in person, whatever. He went around and he got many of the greatest writers right now to mention what their top 10, favorite books are, or what they think are the greatest, whether those are the same things or not. And I love to read the responses of some of my favorite writers, and even some of the writers who I wasn't familiar with. And then at the end, he kind of compiles it to see, which novels were considered the greatest by the greatest number of people. And he breaks it down so well into all different types of things, in terms of time period, in terms of gender, he just breaks it down. So this is a great book, because in order to be a writer, you can't just read books about how to write. You actually have to read novels and figure out how your favorite novels were constructed. And if you need a reading list, you can definitely use this book to see what types of books have influenced your favorite writers. So I highly recommend the top 10. One of the last books, or I guess the last book I'll recommend today, is the Nobel Lectures. I love this book. This book has the actual Nobel Lectures of a lot of the recent Nobel laureates in literature. And this book was published in 2007, so it doesn't have anybody after that. My favorite one is actually the very first one, which is Orhan Pamuk, who is definitely one of my favorite writers. I like his fiction and I like his essays. I just like him in general. He's great. And his lecture, or his acceptance speech, is called My Father's Suitcase, and it changed my life. Changed my life. Okay, so the last thing I want to suggest is that you subscribe, or at least buy when you have the money. You might not have the most money in the world to just spend it on everything, but when you have the opportunity, I recommend that you buy The Writer. This apparently is an older version. I don't have any copies of the newer version right now. They've reformatted. Poets and Writers, definitely great. And Writer's Digest. In the past, I've actually purchased a year's subscription of Publishers Weekly. I was, more interested in the publishing side and not just the writing side. But, I think that's a couple $100. It's more expensive. You may or may not be interested in Publishers Weekly as well. So I hope this helps. Definitely start your writer's bookshelf. You don't have to get everything at once. You can start with elements of style and start with writing down the bones. Oh yes, before I leave, the last thing that I didn't mention is a really great dictionary and a really great thesaurus. Not one that's made for students, not one that can fit in your pocket. You need a nice unabridged one that's heavy, breaks your back to lift it. You need to really have something that has the etymology behind the words, because you never know, you might be writing something from the 1600s and you need to know whether the certain word was even in existence at that time. So you definitely need a heavy duty dictionary and thesaurus that can help you sort through all of your writing needs. So I'm excited about writing. Definitely, if you have any feedback, leave it in the comments below, and definitely subscribe. And remember, never be ashamed.